The chamber was still, the kind of stillness that feels heavy, sacred, almost suffocating. Cameras clicked in the background, but no one dared speak. Then came the sound, one sharp crack of the gavel. It echoed through marble walls like a warning shot. John Roberts adjusted his glasses, voice smooth, measured, rehearsed. The committee will remain in order. His tone carried authority, the kind that doesn't need to shout to silence a room. For years, it worked. Until today, across from him, Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, her expression unshaken. You could feel the tension coil between them, decorum against defiance, tradition against truth. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost too calm. With all due respect, Mr. Chief Justice, silence isn't neutrality. The air split. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, unsure if they'd just captured history or heresy. A ripple of unease moved across the benches. Some lowered their heads, others glanced at Roberts, waiting for the reprimand. He raised the gavel again, but his hand paused. For the first time, the symbol of order trembled. Crockett didn't flinch. She held his gaze, steady, unapologetic. Her words weren't loud, but they carried weight, the kind that lands like truth denied too long. Outside, the headlines hadn't been written yet, but the story had already begun. Inside that room, something unspoken cracked open. The old rules no longer felt sacred, and the balance of power suddenly seemed negotiable. The gavel fell once more, softer this time, uncertain. And in that uncertain sound, the whole country leaned in, sensing it, that this wasn't just defiance. It was the beginning of exposure. But what Crockett revealed next didn't just break the silence. It broke the system's illusion of justice itself. What happened in that chamber wasn't born in that moment. It was years in the making. An entire system built not on justice, but on decorum, where truth is tolerated only if it arrives dressed in politeness, where those who speak too boldly are labeled disruptive, emotional, uncivil. That's the quiet machinery of power, not the kind that roars, but the kind that shushes. It smiles while it erases. It applauds civility as long as civility means compliance. And for generations, it worked. Voices like Crockett's were told to wait their turn, to speak softer, to respect the process. But respect without equality isn't respect, it's surrender. Look closer and you'll see the pattern. Hearings where women were cut off mid-sentence, minority voices corrected for tone, whistleblowers dismissed for being too passionate. Every time truth got close to power, procedure appeared, neat, cold, and absolute. A rule book written to make rebellion look rude. That's the brilliance of the system. It doesn't need to silence you directly. It just convinces you that silence makes you respectable. It rewards composure over courage, calm over conviction. Roberts didn't invent that system. He perfected it. His calm isn't peace. It's control. Every pause, every carefully chosen word, a gatekeeping ritual disguised as reason. And yet, Crockett refused the script. She wasn't there to perform politeness for the comfort of power. She was there to expose it. Her defiance didn't just challenge Roberts, it exposed the cultural code that made his kind of control seem moral. Because here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud, every rule that protects civility also protects corruption. That's the line the cameras replayed. That's the moment millions felt something inside them wake up. The realization that politeness has been weaponized to protect privilege. And if you're watching this and it resonates, if you've ever been told to quiet down, to play nice, to stay in your lane, then this story isn't just hers. It's yours too. Because silence wins when truth retreats. And if you believe voices like hers deserve to be heard, subscribe now. Not for numbers, not for clicks, but because every time truth loses its mic, silence grows stronger. In a system that fears disruption, every act of listening becomes resistance, and every person who refuses to scroll past becomes part of something larger, a collective refusal to be quiet anymore. But to understand why Roberts reacted the way he did, the restrained fury, the subtle panic behind the calm, we need to go behind the robe, into the history of the man who's been shaping silence for decades. John Roberts, The man history books call, measured, moderate, the last grown-up in the room. His face has become a symbol of calm authority, a man above the chaos of partisanship. But calm is easy when you're never the one being silenced. Neutrality sounds noble when it always serves your comfort. Watch the footage. The quiet pen stroke that gutted the Voting Rights Act. The polite smile as ethics violations went unaddressed. The elegant phrasing that justified corporate influence while preaching judicial restraint. Every decision came wrapped in civility, a silk glove covering an iron grip. He tells the world the court must remain untouched by politics, but his rulings tell another story. A story where neutrality means choosing not to see, where balance means keeping the powerful safe from consequence. Roberts has mastered a particular kind of performance, control as morality. His voice never cracks, his robe never wrinkles. But that's not virtue. That's insulation. He isn't untouched by corruption, he's simply protected from its consequences. And that's the genius of his mask. He never needs to raise his voice or show bias. He just needs to let the system tilt, quietly and visibly, until the people at the bottom stop asking questions. For years, his restraint was mistaken for integrity. The public saw a referee, the powerful saw an ally, and the country saw a man who seemed too dignified to be dangerous. But every mask meets its mirror, and this one was about to face him. Before the nation knew her name, Jasmine Crockett was standing in cramped courtrooms defending people who couldn't afford to lose or be heard. The accused, the overlooked, the system's collateral damage. She learned fast that justice wasn't blind. It just looked away when it wanted to. While others learned to play nice with the process, she learned to weaponize it. Every late night spent combing through case files. Every snide remark from a judge who mistook her passion for inexperience. It all honed her. By the time she walked into Congress, her words didn't just cut through noise. They carried legal weight sharpened by 1,000 quiet wars fought before the spotlight ever found her. She knew how power works, how it hides behind politeness, how it buries truth under procedure. So she stopped asking permission to speak and started forcing the record to listen. Her fire wasn't chaos, it was precision. Every sentence backed by law, every challenge framed like a cross-examination. When she said something, you could hear the courtroom in her cadence, the discipline behind the defiance. They called her loud, they called her disrespectful, but what they really meant was that she didn't bow. Because she'd seen what bowing cost people, the innocent who pled guilty to crimes they didn't commit, the families destroyed by loopholes that justice never closed. She learned early, silence never protected the innocent. It only protected those who demanded it. So when Jasmine Crockett stood before John Roberts, she wasn't facing a man. She was facing a system built to mute people like her. And that's why when Roberts tried to silence her, she didn't hesitate. The hearing began, as all of them do, stiff, procedural, predictable. Papers rustled, voices droned through rehearsed formalities. Then Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, and the air changed. Her tone wasn't loud, it was surgical. "Mr. Chief Justice," she began, "at what point does silence become complicity?" The question landed like a strike. Cameras shifted, pens stopped moving. Roberts, maintaining that practiced neutrality, gave a small, deliberate smile, the kind meant to remind everyone who held the gavel. "Congresswoman," he replied, his voice smooth as glass, "this hearing follows order. Let's keep our remarks within the bounds of decorum." Crockett didn't flinch. "If procedure matters more than truth," she said evenly, "then justice is theater." The gavel cracked once, sharper than necessary. It wasn't just to restore order. It was to reassert dominance. His calm began to fray. He cleared his throat. "You're out of line, Miss Crockett." "It's out of line," she echoed softly, leaning into the mic. "Is what they always call the truth before history agrees with it." A ripple went through the chamber. Even the aides behind them froze mid-note. Robert straightened his posture, his tone tightening. "You're questioning the integrity of this institution." Her eyes didn't move from his. "I'm questioning the silence that protects it." Every word landed with legal precision, no shouting, no theatrics, just composure sharpened to a blade. She cited case precedents, pointed out procedural inconsistencies he had allowed in past hearings. Each point cornered him further, and the tapping of his gavel became less about order and more about impatience. The duel wasn't just ideological, it was spiritual. The embodiment of two Americas, one demanding calm obedience, the other daring to speak truth, even when told to sit down. He interrupted her again. "You're grandstanding, Congresswoman." She smiled faintly. "If truth sounds like grandstanding, maybe it's because we've forgotten what it sounds like." The room tensed. Cameras zoomed in. Every word was now oxygen for an audience watching live across the country. Hashtags were already forming, tweets flying mid-sentence. And then silence. Roberts leaned back, his lips pursed, trying to reclaim authority through composure. But everyone could see it. His calm was cracking. Crockett looked down briefly at her notes, then up again. Her voice lowered, steady and deliberate. "Since we're talking about integrity, Mr. Chief Justice, let's talk about what was hidden." Then came the moment she unveiled the proof, and the courtroom stopped breathing. The silence after her last line wasn't stillness. It was shock loading itself into every heartbeat in the room. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the flicker behind John Roberts' eyes, that fleeting moment where certainty begins to sweat. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words carried their own volume, measured, precise, devastating. "Mr. Chief Justice," she began, "you've said time and again that this court stands above politics. But let's review the record, shall we?" She reached for the binder in front of her, thick-tabbed, deliberate. Every page, a receipt. 2 years ago, she continued, when the Voting Rights Act was gutted, you called it a correction to federal overreach. Yet when states used that ruling to purge minority voters, you said the court couldn't intervene? You built the fire, then claimed the smoke was someone else's problem. The chamber rustled, aides whispering, senators shifting uncomfortably. Roberts adjusted his glasses, searching for composure. Crockett pressed forward. "When ethics scandals hit your colleagues, you said the court trusted its members to police themselves. Mr. Chief Justice, if the fox writes the rules for the henhouse, that's not integrity. That's indulgence." Roberts leaned forward, tone clipped. "Congresswoman, your commentary borders on accusation." She lifted her hand slightly, calm, unflinching. "Mr. Chief Justice, I'm not done." The gavel froze midair. She continued, every syllable deliberate, every pause an invitation for the nation to lean closer. "You've told America that faith in the system is what keeps it alive. But faith without accountability isn't justice. It's idolatry. You can silence a speaker, not a fact." A collective murmur spread through the chamber. She had crossed an invisible line, but no one dared interrupt again. Crockett turned to the audience seated behind her, a crowd of citizens, activists, journalists. "I've spent my career defending people punished for speaking inconvenient truths. Every time, someone in power told them their tone was the problem. But tone isn't the issue. Truth is. And truth is loud when it's been buried too long." She set down the binder, flipping one final tab. The screen behind her lit up, past rulings, contradictory statements, Robert's own words juxtaposed side by side. "You say this court doesn't bend to pressure," she said, voice softening. "But it bends to precedent when it's convenient. You demand respect for institutions that have forgotten who they serve. Respect is earned, not inherited." The music beneath the narration swelled, subtle at first. Then, rising like a pulse synchronized with the collective breath of the viewers watching across the nation. "Every time we're told to wait our turn for justice, we lose another generation to silence. I'm done waiting." Roberts finally found his opening. "Miss Crockett, this is highly inappropriate." She leaned forward, eyes locked on him. "What's inappropriate is a judiciary that mistakes comfort for conscience." He looked to the clerk beside him, then back to her. The gavel twitched in his hand, a reflex of control. She continued, undeterred. "You once said the court's job is to call balls and strikes. Not to pitch or bat, but lately, it feels like you've been coaching the team in secret." The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even a few claps before order was hastily restored. But online, it was chaos. Hashtags flashing across hashtag Crockett vs. Court, hashtag Truth Echoes, hashtag Gavel. Trembles. Her voice carried over the noise. I'm not here to perform, for the record. I'm here to remind you, justice doesn't belong to a bench. It belongs to the people it serves. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Then quietly, and the people are watching. Roberts looked down, the slightest break in his facade. His fingers tightened around the gavel. Congresswoman, he said, his voice quieter now. This proceeding, she interrupted him one last time. No proceeding can outlast the truth, Mr. Chief Justice. And no title can outshine accountability. The gavel came down once, twice, the sound ringing hollow in the chamber. But something in the air had shifted. It wasn't the order he'd restored. It was the sound of power realizing it could no longer hide behind decorum. The nation watched as Crockett gathered her papers, every movement calm, deliberate, victory without gloating, defiance without rage. The gavel fell one last time, but it wasn't her words it silenced. The moment the gavel fell, it didn't end the story. It detonated it. Within minutes, the clip hit every platform. Cable news anchors rushed to dissect it, voices pitched with feigned neutrality. Was Congresswoman Crockett out of line? One pundit asked. Or did she expose something deeper? But outside the studios, the verdict was already in, and it wasn't waiting for the next news cycle. TikTok flooded with edits, her words spliced over thunderous beats, captions flashing. You can silence a speaker, not a fact. Teenagers mouthed her lines in school hallways. Activists used her quote as the opener for rallies. On Twitter, or what was left of it, hashtag Crockett v. Scort trended for 48 hours straight. Even conservative commentators couldn't resist. Some mocked, others warned. One headline read, Crockett's meltdown or masterclass? Another, the Congresswoman who crossed the line and drew it anew. The split was predictable. But the resonance wasn't, because beneath the noise, something else was happening, quiet but seismic. Clips of Roberts tapping the gavel too hard became memes. People slowed them down, captioning them when control slips through your fingers. Others replayed her defiant line, "Justice is theater," as if it were prophecy. When power hides behind rules, truth finds another stage, the people. Marches began quoting her speech on posters. Commentators who once ignored her were now forced to respond. Even foreign outlets picked it up. American lawmaker challenges silence at the top. In living rooms and dorms, conversations sparked about race, power, and the price of decorum. And through it all, Jasmine Crockett didn't tweet a word. She let the people speak for her. The moment had become movement, her defiance repurposed as an anthem. Her calm courage recycled into millions of voices saying, enough. But Crockett didn't stop there. She turned exposure into empowerment. Days later, as the uproar settled into history, Jasmine Crockett spoke again, not in anger, but in clarity. Her voice carried the calm of someone who'd already paid the price for truth and decided it was worth it. Civility means nothing, she said, if it demands silence. Those words didn't echo, they resonated. Because every viewer who had watched her stand against the most powerful judge in the land knew what she meant. They'd felt that pressure too in workplaces, classrooms, communities, that quiet, invisible hand urging them to shrink so others could stay comfortable. Her defiance wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was duty, the kind that reminds the nation that justice is supposed to answer to courage, not comfort. She didn't just challenge Roberts. She challenged the myth that power and righteousness always sit in the same chair. The footage replayed endlessly, not as outrage porn, but as testimony. People didn't watch it to see her win an argument. They watched to remember what standing tall looks like. Because that day, dignity stopped being politeness. It became resistance. Because this wasn't just a viral moment. It was a verdict on who we've become. Every viewer felt it. Not just entertained, but indicted, inspired, renewed. And as the echoes of her words ripple across America, one truth stands: silence lost that day. The truth didn't end in that chamber. It began there. Crockett's defiance became a spark, and every person who felt it now carries that fire. Courage isn't a performance. It's a chain reaction. One voice stands, another follows, and suddenly the silence that once ruled the room starts to crumble. If this moment shook you, don't let it fade into another scroll. Be the echo. Let your engagement speak louder than apathy. Like, because courage deserves witnesses. Share, because truth dies in echo chambers. Comment, because history is written by those who refuse to stay quiet. Every action counts. Every click, every word, every ripple of belief. Like, share, and comment #Crockett moment to prove that truth still outruns power. Because movements aren't built by headlines, they're built by people who decide that silence will never have the final word.